Britt, I
Yeah.
cannot believe that in order to spite me for this podcast and the IPO window's closed, you've gone so far as to IPO a company just out of spite.
I mean, it's great that I can finally talk about it, Sam.
Well, hello, friends. It's good to be back. I missed you.
Back in your office.
Back in my office. Britt kept my seat warm. You did a nice job. You also showed me I can change my camera angle. So thanks for that. I'm grateful. But welcome to another week of More or Less. And what an eventful week it has been. How are you guys doing? Where are you?
We are in New York right now. We're running into that challenge where we're a married couple staying in a hotel room trying to record a podcast together and not echo. So I'm in a weird hallway, and Dave is in the main room.
I was going to say, your hotel rooms have hallways?
And tchotchkes. Tchotchkes.
Best hotel in New York City.
Well, do you want to give it a shout out?
Yeah, the Greenwich Hotel. I love this place.
The Greenwich Hotel.
It's my favorite hotel in the world, period.
Whoa.
It's the best.
Whoa.
I saw on social media that Michael Jackson doesn't pay for hotels, or didn't, because he just call ahead and promote
Michael
them
Jackson?
and get it for free. Did you guys? This is part of the deal.
What kind of social media are you following that's talking about Michael Jackson's hotel?
Listen, I don't follow shit anymore. I just get things fed to me like a pig. It's just whatever comes up next.
Got it.
Sam took a time portal to the 1980s and we've lost him forever.
It's great. It's great.
So you guys are in New York. You're in the Greenwich Hotel. You have a hallway. Do you want to talk about why you're in New York?
You know, got to make a good New York stop every once in a while to check in on things going on here.
Well, or to take a company public, Dave. Like, what are you missing?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
That was a tee up to plug the company you're taking public. And I'm glad you used it to talk about my restaurant scouting.
Dave is like me. He's just wandering through life while Britt has
an agenda.
Britt, I cannot believe that in order to spite me for this podcast and the IPO window's closed, you've gone so far as to IPO a company just out of spite.
I mean, it's great that I can finally talk about it, Sam, because when I was making my 2024 predictions and saying there will probably be more IPOs, and I keep bringing up IPOs on this pod, I was trying to drop hints that, something's coming, and now it's here. And so by the time this episode releases, Life 360 will be public. It's been a long journey. I've been on this board for 6.5 years. I think there was 15 million in revenue when I joined, and now close to $500 million, and the numbers are all looking incredible. And what's weird is we're already public on the ASX, the Australian Stock Exchange. So this is a really strange one. We're figuring out pricing and all this stuff, but we're already public, and there aren't really comps for how this is going. But yeah, I hope by the time people are listening to this episode, it all goes well. This is kind of my first foray at taking a company public. So it's been informative.
It's already public on some weird ass foreign stock exchange, and you're bringing it to the US stock exchange. Why? Liquidity?
Well,
legitimacy?
Yeah, Sam, it's called capital.
There's money there.
Yeah, liquidity. I think it's also just a benchmark we've been wanting to get to for a long time. And we feel like we're already public. We already have all of our information out there. We might as well just check the box of the US as well.
Fair enough.
What has surprised you most about the process, being on the inside?
How much really happens right at the end? The last 2 days are insane. And I think in general, just people's reactions to Life 360 has been this sleeper company that people don't realize is a top 5 social networking app and has been for many years, has 70 million daily active users. Is the app for families, and specifically moms.
Network? I thought it's spyware.
Well, the kids thought it was spyware.
Well, but they're over that now. Kids actually like it now. There was that whole TikTok thing that happened where the teens hated it, but then they loved it. Life 360 owns Tile. So
yeah, Britt,
yes.
give us the pitch. I think you've talked about it before on the pod, but for those who
I
haven't.
understand this company is basically spyware. So what, and like that's it for children, which I'm not against. I like that. I use it. But what is this company actually?
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Life 360 tracks and connects you with like the people and things that are closest to you. So the app itself is made for families, and most people use it to understand where everyone is. It's like a really souped up version of Find My Friends, where there are a lot of added features. There's like instant crash detection, for instance. Like it knows when you get in a wreck, it dispatches emergency services. So parents love this that have teenage drivers, for instance. It's like the best thing you can do to make sure your kids are safe. Also, we own Tile. So all of the things that you have, similar to AirTags, you can put it on everything you have, including pets. And it's really the only app and network that is interoperable across Google and Apple. So while Apple is certainly a competitor, it works, across devices, which, obviously Apple and Google don't. So yeah, it's really well respected and well loved. The NPS is one of the crazier things I've seen. And one of the things that's most interesting in terms of like the growth is that like not only do they have a 33% annual year-over-year growth rate already, but they're also now starting to introduce ads and kind of playing that Instacart strategy of, the bigger picture here in terms of how big the market can get.
So it's kind of like, for the ads perspective, would be like, if you don't like your children and you want different children, it'll tell you children nearby that you can switch with.
Totally.
Yes, that's exactly what we're planning.
Oh, you don't like your car, but there's another car nearby. It's like basically just letting you.
So Sam, you're kind of previewing our second segment or in our focus for this episode, which is going to be our business ideas of the moment. We spend a lot of time on this pod.
Business ideas.
Kind of tearing things down a little bit, but that we also spend a lot of our brain space thinking about building things. So put a pin in that idea, because you can go build the product to find yourself some other children.
Swap.com.
I will just say, Sam and I did one of the bravest things parents can do and take a group of children to the San Mateo County Fair. I don't know if anyone has done this, but
every year.
It is a real treat. And I think we were feeling a little superhero. So we decided to tell our children they could bring friends, which was also a bold move, and ended up with us riding on the rides with our kids' friends because our kids didn't want to ride on the rides. But this is relevant because a parent said, "Oh, here's my daughter's AirTag," and shared me with the AirTag on her in case I lost her at the San Mateo County Fair, which I did not do, but was yet a reminder that this kind of tracking can be valuable and it's so easy, and kind of why not do it?
Yeah.
I like the idea. Actually, here's a business idea for you. T-shirts with 3D barcodes for your children so that any adult can scan them and return them.
That's not bad.
Sam, no more swapping. No more childswap.com.
Scan this kid to return them.
Yeah. Even if I could just get a sticker pack, imagine a sticker pack with 3D barcodes that you can just barcode your children, right? I think there's real value to this. You could basically get a call back without disclosing your phone number.
Why stop at stickers? I mean, tattoos are all the rage. No, I'm joking. But okay, we're gonna.
Ooh, temporary that's great. Because kids love temporary tattoos.
Totally.
So if you had temporary tattoos with built-in 3D barcodes with their peanut allergies or some shit, people would love that stuff. You just scan your child, scan any child you want.
Yeah.
You know what it could have for the woke?
I'll pass
it could have
this
your
on.
pronouns.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Here we go.
We've gone there, and now we're going to go somewhere else. So Britt, I wish you the best of luck with this IPO. It sounds fun. It sounds exciting. I know you've been working very hard on it. So we will be watching and cheering and eager to hear what else you learn.
Sam, I'm curious to get your feedback after it's all said and done. So we'll talk about it next week.
All I want to know, price go up, price go down, price stay same. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, that's what we're optimizing for.
It doesn't matter what the company does. Price go up. You should figure out how to make it a meme stock.
I'm glad you said there's price go up. There's also number goes up. And guys, we're going to have to pick a slogan because I'm getting into the merch business. I got to tell you, this is the first item. If you're listening to the pod, I am wearing an awesome sweatshirt that says win-win,
Oh my gosh.
made and conceived by our good friend Jessica Sittig, the artistic genius.
I just appreciate that you're like 5 years behind on everything. It's like you just discovered stories and now you're in the merch business. It's like welcome to 2020.
I don't know, Sam. The merch business never went away.
I know. It's like
I don't even have a retort to that. So we can just fine. I mean, I'd rather I'm myself. I'm timeless. Like it doesn't really matter what era I'm in. I'm in all the eras.
It's true.
But
you're a classic, Jess.
I really think that especially in business, there are these phrases and moments that really speak to our community. And I want everyone to know I'm going to sell you stuff that speaks to the phrases of our time, like number go up and win-win. I believe in win-wins. I also think it is an overused phrase. And therefore, by wearing it, I'm going to be making a statement. But I agree.
Do I like patent? What's my vig on number go up?
Well, I don't know. That we haven't negotiate that. And right now, I hope Jess enjoys the social
Sam, we have to make
capital.
that merch. Sam, we have to make the merch.
Is this more like you know what OpenAI would do is they would just steal it and then deal with the problems later.
Sure. Great. I also, yeah, I mean, that's fine. We don't have to talk about them. They don't get any merch. But okay, so I just wanted to plug that. If you have phrases, put them in the comments. Maybe we'll vote on them, community driven. Guys, I'm going to kick off the what to build phase because I am probably one of the least likely builders among this crew.
I'm the only non-investor that's actually an entrepreneur. So I don't know how you look at that.
Well, you said it, not me. But we'll set the stage here a little bit and I'll tackle media. And then Britt will go to you because I'm sure you have a lot of ideas of what to build in this moment in media. And what is so fascinating to me is that the market couldn't be worse. Like investors have kind of rightfully fled the space because the business model has changed. It continues to change. There's not much that's working, it appears. But at the same time, I got to tell you, there is so much, especially editorial talent, that is out there looking to build. And I see it every day, and it is really, really exciting to me. So I'm actually really jazzed in this moment. And I think that there are going to be amazing publications that are built around communities that have subscription and membership as their core, but can branch into so many different areas. And I'm talking to a number of them that I don't want to mention yet, but I'm just so excited for them. And yesterday, actually, a technology publication in Canada that I backed early on just raised a significant round of financing from the FT, which follows 2 weeks before when another publication I backed raised a significant round of financing for the FT. And these publications, one is called Charter News and the other is called The Logic, are doing great and are really embracing this model. So I think we're in this very unique.
What are the metrics like for those companies? Are they profitable? Like, what do you think? Why do you think they're investing in them? Is it a growth rate? Is it like they're subscription based, I presume?
Yeah. So they all have, subscription growth in media is not hockey stick. It's linear, but it's recurring revenue and it gets big fast. So they all have solid linear growth in subscriptions and are also leveraging that into other revenue streams depending on the company. What it might be data, it might be consulting, it might be
merch?
Events, it might be brand partnership. I'm talking to one that has a great merch game right now that may be inspiring this. I'm learning a lot, but it really is. I mean, it's a very interesting time. Now, Brett, you raise a good question. Like, the exit market for these businesses over time is still unclear, right? Like, in a sense. But I also think if you have a growing, profitable, sort of cash spewing off, kind of community anchored media product, like there are a tremendous number of options down the lines.
Exit multiples are just way lower. I mean, just anecdotally, Brit & Co has gotten a bunch of inbound recently on the M&A front. It's profitable, it's growing, but it's like the multiples are so bad. And I'm like, is this the right time? It's a weird one, right?
Because I don't think this is why I think it's time to build. It's not time to sell. And I think, and I'm not going to argue that there's going to be like a slew of $1 billion exits like Politico or, they've got The Athletic at 500 and so forth and so forth. But I don't think those are just around the corner per se. But Sam, you've been trying to say something. Yeah.
I think there's thing that's happening right now in terms of what to build. And I think what you're talking about just fits into this is there's just this massive bifurcation of companies that are being designed to go public versus companies that are just incredibly good to own. Right. And to me, the companies that are designed to go public, it's like, fine, like you're trying to play for multi-billion-dollar exits and multiples and blah, blah, blah. But you're like, do you know how sweet it is to own like a media company that does like 10 million in top line with 60% margins that you can then just like continuously like reinvest forever? Like that's such a durable asset.
But why would the FT want to invest in that, Sam? They invest.
Let's come back to that in a second, because I don't actually think it's a good financial investment for them, which is a
right.
But like for me, the interesting thing, and you see this in media, but you also see this with creators all over the place, right? Is I think the new pattern is go out, dominate a vertical with a brand and content and media that like gives you reach and distribution and loyalty and lowered CAC in like across a bunch of stuff, and then churn out C Corps and products that don't have to be, some of them could be really big companies someday, but they just are like what sits on top of that core engine. It's like a little locomotive that can. So to me, it's the thing about media, and this is not just, Jessica style subscription media, but anything, but like if you can as an individual entrepreneur while owning the cap table, not get too diluted, not take too much financing, not make too many promises to other people, build that like core engine, the optionality and just like life it opens up is huge. I mean, people are like, I want $1 billion exit on blah, blah. And like, look, if you're an entrepreneur, forget the financing markets. There's like two ways to get there, right? One is just broadly, you can own 10% of something that goes public and somehow gets liquid at $1 billion. Or two is you can own 100% of something that makes $10 million a year for a decade. It turns out the latter is a lot easier, right? And also, like, the reality is it creates so many options for you because you can just layer businesses on top of them left and right. And so this is a theme we've been investing in at Slow for a while now. But the thing about it is you have to change your mentality, and LPs need to change their mentality because, look, it's not clear that the media itself is actually a good financial investment, right? It might not be. It's just like, you're buying a locomotive, right? It's like the things that come after that and on top that become interesting. And B, like the multiples on the media part of it are terrible, right? So I think there's a whole bunch of businesses to build that look like that, but this is a very different pattern.
I also don't think that, like, let's get into the nature of this idea a little bit. Like, I think we're talking at a pretty high level. And since we're doing an ideas episode, I guess I want to get into the nature of this idea. Like, what are we actually talking about here? Are we, is it just subscriptions that are the driver here? Like, what type of media? What's the distribution? Like, just like, for
I can
example,
answer all those questions.
Like Instagram is an absolute train wreck right now. I don't know how you would build a business on this platform anymore. And I think that, like, Jess, you've got a business.
Like, I'm not going to talk about how I think Instagram's a train wreck. And here we are.
Well, he doesn't. Yeah. but Dave, but I just want to make sure people understand what you're saying. Do you mean that it's just a flood of irrelevant stuff?
No, Dave hates the new ads.
No, I think it's a combo. It's like, you've got AI content just like flooding the zone now.
Yeah.
You've got the algorithms kind of all over the place. They're testing ads that you can't skip. Which to me suggests that this asset is now a declining asset. Like, they're now in a position where they want to just harvest it, monetize it as much as possible while moving on to the next thing, which is probably Threads. Fine. But in all cases, if you're a creator building a media business like what you guys are talking about.
No, not on Instagram, though.
Yeah, but I think that's why we have to talk about this, which is like, what is the nature of this idea? Because I think a lot of people listening probably hear this and they're like, oh, I need to go and, tell stories, and I need to create content and build media. And I think a lot of people by default think that means building in social media distribution channels. And I know that's not what we're talking about. So I just want to get into what it is that we're actually talking about.
Yeah, and I can use real examples. I mean, I've got half a dozen of these investments and there are many more. And I mean, we all consume these products too, right? It starts by owning a loyal community. I mean, same with sort of Brit & Co. And I think one of the big shifts that has happened in media is media used to be, I mean, think of the New Yorker, think of Vanity Fair, think of the New York Times, right? It's very horizontal, right? It covers everything. And its unifying factor is sort of like a zeitgeist or a view on the world or something like that, right?
Sure.
Well, I'd actually go say it's literally, it used to be like physical distribution.
Right. It used to be what could fit in the paper, right? And that could, but I think we all know that the internet has made it possible for any reader to connect deeply with an array of things that they want to go deep on, and they don't need the physical paper being the bundling function. So we've seen that unbundling, as we talked about. But I think what's happening, I mean, I've built this over the last 10 years around technology and journalism and business journalism, but I'm seeing similar patterns in terms of communities around sports, communities around hobbies, communities around places kind of follow these same patterns. And that if you can start by having content that this community feels they need and will have some kind of direct relationship with, not that we'll follow you on Instagram, but will sign up to your emails, ideally pay you a little bit of money, that is a great seed. And to your question of how you do it, there's only one way to do it. And you have to start with content that no one else has.
I agree. And I think...
But where does that content go? I guess that's what I'm trying to...
Let me give my answer to this, because I think this is key, which is we're not the only people that are saying things in this ilk. And like what I've heard other people say, which I think is actually correct, is that the internet is going back away from feeds to destinations where you think to yourself, I'm interested in blank, I go here. Or what's going on with blank, I go here. And it's like, it's very much the resurgence and the rebirth of the homepage is like what people are talking about. I actually think this is the right way to think about it, which is like, you think, what is going on in tech news? You go to the information.
Or you go to the app,
I kind of disagree with you.
Inbox. I don't think it's just the homepage.
But I also think like AI is dismantling this. Don't you think? Like I go to GPT sometimes just to get like
summaries. Right, you're the only one. You're the only one. I've really decided this. I'm making a call. Chatbots are not the future.
My Gmail assistant is going to summarize all my subscription newsletters for me every day and like give me the top headlines.
That's great. That doesn't change this.
This is just how the world works, which is that the middle always drops out, right? The middle always drops out. And so I agree with Britt that in some form, there's like the hyper caffeinated, super streamlined like feed of whatever is like a thing that will exist in some form. Whether it can be done for truth and relevance and like that's a whole other ball of wax. But I just think it's like, you are interested in surfing. Where do you go? You care about...
I just subscribed to Surfer's Journal and I meant to bring it as a prop because it's a print magazine.
And the way you do that, you might start on social as top of funnel, like fine. You have to initially find some audience, but ultimately what you need is just like people that trust a brand or a person, right? And like that they seek that person out for a specific topic. And then they're going to seek them out and be interested when they show up and say, hey, I've got an event, or hey, I've got a this, or hey, I've got a that. And I think that's true for all sorts of businesses and places. And it's just the middle is the place you just don't want to be. Like if you can own one of those, which by the way, doesn't take a lot of capital to start, it takes a lot of authenticity, it takes a lot of stuff that makes a lot of sense. Now,
the middle as defined as the old newspaper, the sort of amalgamation of everything.
Well, remember, it used to be that like people would subscribe to like 10 newspapers, right? And like that era ended, and it went to like 1 and then 0, right? And I just think going back to like we each have our intersected niches. Like I don't want like there is the mindless feed of hilarious videos that basically the internet will always tend towards entertainment is fine. It's fun. It's good. But like Mr. Beast competes against all of that, and I think it's a losing game. Whereas what doesn't is like I just got my pilot's license on Sunday, right? Like,
oh yeah, congrats!
Yay! It's
Woo-hoo!
Like I get sent because I got on some list like the monthly, private pilots, high gloss magazine that looks like an awful business. It's like the same guy advertising aviation insurance every month. I promise you, of the 150,000 private pilots in America, there is a better vertical trusted brand around that you could build. And then once you have that, guess what? Pilots spend a lot of money on a lot of shit.
Isn't it just Flying Magazine?
Like CC something industry association, random.
Okay, but Sam, here's actually a really good question, which Jess, one of the publications that you're referring to, which I won't reveal,
thank you,
was I found very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an area I really love, and I didn't know about it.
Well, that's because I'm not helping him yet. Yes,
but now I know about it, and not dissimilar to what Sam's saying. I'm also working on my private pilot's license, and these niche areas, are hard to find the content for sometimes, right? Like you happen upon.
This is Sam's whole creator pitch, Dave.
The internet's doing a very terrible job at distributing this stuff to people right now.
Can I say, I feel like we're in the unbundling arena right now with media. You're right. People are going direct, creator channels are direct, website direct, subscription email. But back in the day, there were companies like Meredith that existed, or Scripps, which would look at an audience demo. So women between the ages of 25 and 45, or people that love home interiors and food. And they would aggregate a bunch of channels and brands underneath that general theme. And then, ultimately all ships rose, right? Because they were able to find a lot of synergies across all these different brands and blah, 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 blah. And I do think
synergy just meant distribution.
Yeah, but YouTube TV is another example.
When ads are valuable, you could sell it once across 6 different magazines.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we're going to take turns.
No.
I'm going to say something, and then I'll pass it to one of you. Britt, you nailed it. And that is a great point. And that is an ad-driven demo mentality, as Dave and Sam were saying.
Same with Netflix.
But the reason... the growth of Meredith and all the companies you made it was so you could sell an advertiser a demo of women who were likely to buy, soap and were reading one of 3 titles. And I do think there's great publishers and can be supported by advertising, a lot of their revenue streams there, but that is not the true north of these businesses.
I'm not saying they all need to be media companies. I actually think I can imagine Brit & Co, for instance, getting acquired by a CPG company that's trying to get to women, like a beauty company or something, because we have such high distribution and engagement, the customer acquisition cost, for maybe, women in that category could drop dramatically.
Can I push you on this? Here's my thesis. Media is incredibly strategic to own, but a shitty business. Right? Doesn't mean it doesn't create cash flow and a flywheel you can build from. It's a shitty business, right? But so it's a great point. And here's the thing with your acquisition. Would some smart CPG be like, oh, in 2024, the hardest part is authenticity of our brand and connecting with the demo? Yeah, that is the hardest part. Making products is easy. You just go to fucking China and press 4 buttons. You have your normal CPG with nice branding. So the thing I push you on for Brit & Co is that is the right way to think about it, which is the media is the strategic part, but then you monetize it through the CPG. The thing is, and you've done this before or tried it, which is you should strategically own the media and then just build your own CPG.
Well, I know.
Finally, Sam, I've been telling her this for how many years now? Look, the hard thing about this is connecting the flywheel. I really believe that it's easy to say this. It's easy to say, build the media machine that delivers either a product, a CPG, like you're saying, or a service of some kind. But connecting those two is a very rare thing that people pull off.
Dave, I think the hard thing is having the content that is 10x better than the other content out there too. So
for sure.
I think a lot of people, every news or media entrepreneur I speak with, that kind of, they have a story of the kind of content they want to do, but it's not essential.
Well, I think that's easy. The reason why is really simple, Jess, which is the pitch you've been making for a decade, which is instead of spending, call it half or 70% of your time selling ads, spend the rest of that time on making 10x better content so that, you can drive it through a subscription, right? That's a really simple thing that happens. And you guys remember, I sat on the board of Dwell Magazine for a very long time,
right?
Which we sold to Recurrent Media, one of these aggregators. And, we both had a subscription and an ad business there. And it can just become very hard, to build the content that you want to build if you're spending a ton of your time on ads. Like that's kind of what it comes down to.
Sorry, can I just try to push it a little bit further? I don't think the ads business for a media company that isn't at massive global scale, or the subscription business, is actually that valuable by itself. That's your flywheel. It gives you infinite at-bats, right, if you're good at it. And the thing about ads is it's like increasingly competitive. The thing about subscriptions is it actually, interestingly, if you have 1 million social media followers and 100,000 paid subscribers, that funnel of people are like, oh my God, not only do people listen to you, but they're willing to pay you, creates an unbelievably core key audience that's probably going to pay you for more shit, right? And so that's like an incredibly good sign. So it gives you the cash flow to reinvest, right, and build businesses. It gives you that you can wake up and always have, and it's like an incredible funnel step effectively. But I actually don't think that, I think again, the mistake people have been making with this media stuff for a while is they either say, I want infinite scale, which will break you, right? There's only 150,000 pilots in America. If you saturate that market, you could say, well, how do I go to the next market? We say, I own that audience, and now I just want to sell them tons of more high value shit. Right? That's a very different strategy. But
yeah, both are true, Sam. I mean, to be very clear, I think high quality journalism is a phenomenal business and have a lot of evidence to prove it. It is really hard and it takes a really long time.
But it's not as high margin as a tech business.
No, it's not as high. No, of course it's not. But there are other types of business. Tech businesses are not the definition of an only good business, right? Of course it's not as high margin as a tech business. But it could be 20, 30, 40% profit margins. Yes. I mean, absolutely. But I also completely agree with what you're saying. And I think in this moment, when we have a dead landscape when it comes to both new and existing and going out of business news properties, the model you talked about is a really important one to put into the equation. I mean, I don't know if you guys have been following what's happening at the Washington Post, but Washington Post has a new CEO, has 2 new editors this week who were kind of appointed in a very last minute restructuring, and its audience is down 77%.
Ooh.
And this is, again, to the point you were making, Sam, that this is the Washington Post, but it went a kind of middle strategy, right, of trying to be more general news, trying to compete with the New York Times. It just really, really isn't working. And this is, this is the paper of Watergate, to remind everyone. So,
well, and just isn't that because Bezos bought it and then, from a vanity perspective, wanted to compete for everyone effectively?
Yes,
and
totally, absolutely. And I was gathering last week with 30 news editors, and we always start this annual event by going around the room and talking about something on our mind or a question we have. And one of the smartest people in the room started the event off by saying, "I think we've gotten our audience sizing wrong. I think we fundamentally don't know the real size of our audience. We've been saying it's way bigger than it is. And because of that, we're not building great businesses." So I completely agree. But I think, and we can move on to other great things to build, but I only know this industry, but I think we'd probably be at a loss for times in other industries where there's such a disconnect between there's such a high quality of talent that is coming in and ready to build things, and there is such a lack of resources on all fronts, on key operational things, but also on the investment side and a lot of other things. And so this is obviously a problem I'm thinking a lot about, but I think we need to really find a way to connect this really flood of talent that is ready to build.
Can I try one more Can I try a capstone on this? I have a cool framework for this.
Okay. And then Dave, and then we'll move on.
So here's the big picture story I would tell, which is we all like to talk about the story of how Google tricked the news and content industry into opening everything up for free to try to get scale and ad dollars. And I think that is true. And that was a major misstep in the history that basically the whole content industry has been trying to fix now for a while. And some have kind of gotten there. I think there's a second misstep that's less well understood, which is that basically the internet broadly convinced all these publishers that scale equals value, right? They're like, we just want to be as big as possible. And what we need to do is chase the tech companies for margin and scale and eyeball and all that type of stuff. Here's the reality, though, which is funny, is while that's happening, inequality is off the charts, right? The top 1% of Americans control 60% of the wealth, right? And 60% of, by proxy, the spend, if not more, right? In a lot of ways, outside of core housing and food, right? And so I think the reality is that when you think about this, specialty publishers who stay in their lane, own their audience super, super deeply, and can grow share of wallet for the passion areas people can invest in and really care about, like, is the big, like, screw up effectively, right? Where everyone got pulled down, the BuzzFeed being probably the craziest example, but everyone got pulled down this thing into general audiences and competing with tech. And what they should have been doing is saying, like, why do I care? Like, I'll be the Washington Post. I'm going to be super elitist. I only cater to Washington insiders. Guess what? Great fucking business, because everyone's trying to influence those 1,000 people, right? And so, like, that's actually, I think, kind of the real story here in a lot of articles.
That is why I started The Information 10 years ago, with those examples. But I think it's more
like, you guys talked about it or something.
It's sort of like we talked about it, but it is, I just want to say, because I messed up, the Washington Post lost half its audience and $77 million last year, not 77% of its audience. Dave, you had a thought.
Yeah, the thing that just keeps coming back to me is a simple truth, which is customer obsession builds great businesses.
Totally.
Right? And that these interests, one of my other favorite sayings is, if you're not the most passionate person in the world working on the thing you're working on, somebody else will be, and they'll beat you at it. And people oftentimes, when they're trying to find, or a business idea to work on, they'll try to think about something that people might want, right? There's like this interesting idea framework where it's like, let's find a market. Let's like think about what other people might want, instead of just thinking about, what am I the most passionate about in the world? And what can I be passionate about for the long term, right? Like, what can I spend the next 10 years doing and maintain my passion for? Jess, you're clearly doing it with The Information. And, one of my favorite examples of what we've all been talking about is Mark Rober on YouTube. He was really passionate about science. He started making science videos for kids. It really worked. And then he started making a subscription kit company for kids. And he just continually speaks to his audience as though he's just really passionate, really dedicated. The feedback loop is really tight. My understanding is he's building an enormous business because of this. But, it's just like any great business, you have to be consistently obsessed with your customer and doing the right thing. And when I hear these things like Washington Post getting the data that you just shared, I just look at a business that lost track of its customer, right? Like, and stopped talking to its customer and started thinking about, like you guys are saying, this like ethereal something audience. You also see this happen a lot with musicians that start making music for some unknown audience that they think they need to reach, rather than just making the music that they love, right? And so I guess that to me is kind of the thing that I keep thinking.
And I completely agree. And I have thought a lot about why, right? Like, so why in media, and again, I only know media, do people struggle so much to focus on a specific community, things they're passionate about, and those readers? And I think there are some real reasons. One, like, especially in certain types of journalism, it's really important that we don't cater to an audience, right? Like, you don't want to just tell people the things that you think they want to hear. But that to me is actually different than just serving those people. But sometimes those lines can be confusing to people. And so if you say you're going to do deeply reported journalism that business leaders in tech have to read, some people hear, oh, you're going to write stories that make those people look good or that they're going to agree with. And what I've always found is actually that the reader is way smarter than that. So you can't serve them by doing that. But I think in media, one of there's been this reluctance. I mean, people look at it, to this day, someone's like, you're niche. I'm like, yeah, I'm niche. Like, find someone as big as us who, of our vintage, right? And it's seen as very sort of anti-ambitious to do the kind of focus. And one of the things I really am grateful for is that by covering tech startups, I saw how companies could get big by doing one thing really well. And that gave me confidence to focus when I think there are so many other forces that are telling entrepreneurs to putting them in that position of like thinking that they have to go broad. And then business model.
Taking venture capital inherently makes you think that you need to expand faster. And I think is the downfall for a lot of companies that, right. But like, if Jess had taken venture capital in the early days, like, I don't think she would have focused.
Venture capital went from like a niche cottage supporting industry which to a thing that's big enough and influential enough that it actually is accidentally shaping the narrative of what companies show up, right? And like it's basically become a reflection of itself in a lot of ways and a lot of bad practice. Now, there are other factors. Like, look, I do think that you can't discount the fact that the internet changes the dynamics of scale dramatically. Every niche is bigger than people expect, so that's good. But then also like things like ad targeting and automatically putting content in front of the right people makes it people way lazier because they're like, well, I can just put it out and it will find its audience rather than serving an audience. So there are other technology dynamics at play. But I think the fundamental thing is exactly what we said, which is like media is an incredibly powerful launchpad and can be a great business to own. It's not a public company business, right? And, unfortunately, if all the money was designed for public company financing, it kind of fucks up all the media companies until they fix themselves.
But I think you guys have been talking about this theme in the software world for the last 6 months, right? I mean, that there are a lot of great businesses that don't look like the WeWorks or the Ubers or whatever were the poster children of the last ways of tech. And I think that's important. And yeah, so I think this is it's a very, very, very exciting moment. It's also really hard. I mean, that is the other part that I think isn't enough in the conversation on building things. Dave, to your point about like having to be the most passionate person in the world, like you don't just get a few things right and set these ships sailing.
Yeah.
You're climbing the mountain every day.
Like one thing that I keep thinking about is, are you building a business for the charts? Or are you building a business for a customer? And I just think that like that is one of the things that's going on the internet. If you look at Mr. Beast, he's building a business for the charts, right? Like doing, everything, just incredible analytical studying of what it takes to make something go viral. They'll literally make any content that will make something grow and go viral, right? On the other hand, you have Mark Rober, who's building for a very specific customer, right? Jess, you're building for a very specific customer. You know exactly who you're building for. Every time I open an information email, I read it and I'm like, yep, that's what I wanted to read today, like 100%. And I'm very happy because I feel like every time I open it, you're like not off, right? Like you're writing exactly what I want to hear, right? And Sam, that's kind of, I think, this tale of two cities that you're talking about. And I think that most people actually in the Valley, when they're thinking about ideas, they think about charts. They're like, how do I make something to get on the charts, right? And I think making something to get on the charts is very, very hard. Most like music producers will tell you never, ever try to make music that'll get you on the charts. Make music that you are happy with. And so I guess that's the nuanced point I'm trying to make here is that I think that people need to know that these two ways of thinking exist and that they're going to lead you to very different places. And social media actually these days mostly wants the chart version of things. It doesn't want the high quality version of things. And so I hope people are hearing that what we're talking about here, particularly around, Jess, the point you've been trying to make is that you have to go direct to the customer. You have to build a direct relationship, not mediated by social media, ideally through very direct channels of communication with people so that you can have a very direct conversation with them to build a feedback loop that creates a really high quality experience.
Yeah. And it's totally doable. And I think we're going to see.
I mean, this is our whole creator investing thesis. It's not necessarily traditional media. I don't think I'm not quite as negative as you, Dave, on social media in terms of like being a launching platform for some of this stuff. I think the reality is like when you start from zero, finding that initial audience, like the algorithms can be useful. I just think.
Oh, sure. Don't get me wrong. I agree with you, Sam.
You basically I think the idea is like in a social media context, designing content that isn't going to go hyper viral broadly. But ideally, most people will hate, but exactly the right people will like is kind of the zone you want to be in. Like you basically, I think that's very different than like funny videos that like you get millions of views. Like those are not valuable, right? What is valuable though is a thing that like the algorithm, if you basically think of the algorithm as just greedy for engagement, is going to reject for almost everyone. But then like the pocket you actually want to talk to is going to fucking love it.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I agree with you. What I'm arguing for is that people do not build only for Instagram. I think you've got a lot of people that are out there building only for Instagram, only for TikTok, only for YouTube, whatever. Yeah. Just like an investor would never invest in a single stock, you want to be in a portfolio of places. And ideally, most importantly, you're building the very direct communication channel. And,
I would say also those types of people they're really just sharecroppers, right?
Don't be one. But Sam, I think we have a responsibility. We're sitting here trying to talk about business, right? Like, and ideas. I think we have a responsibility to really directly tell people, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Use it as a part of your top of funnel, right?
Well, but there are two reasons for that, and then we got to let you guys go because you got some IPO things to do. But I think so Dave, like quality news publishers learned that the hard way from Google and Facebook that paid them a bunch of money and then stopped paying them. So that's one reason you don't do it, is that the priorities of these platforms change.
But people keep doing it, Jess. So that's why I think that's why I'm hammering this so hard.
No, and again, I just don't, I think the part missing from all of this too is the nature and quality of the content. And if you're building a business based on that, your passion, your ideas need to be what differentiates that. And the second you go and say, actually, my goal is going to be driving up on this chart, on this platform, you are giving up that insight, that IP of what that content you believe needs to exist in the world. And you're deciding, no, actually, it's stories in this format that get engagement. So you're not just sort of putting your eggs in different distribution baskets. You're fundamentally not building what you need to build the loyalty, because you're building it to someone else's specifications. And I think there are, and we didn't even mention podcast. I mean, there were 5 or 6 ways. Sam, I think websites are one of them, but there are 5 or 6 things that I think represent direct, and they will be 7, 8, 9, 10, and ways to speak directly to that audience in the way that only you know that they need to be kind of spoken to. And, that's like, I can't go off and start 27 more content businesses because I don't have that unique insight and knowing those communities in the same way that I know the world of business, but other people do. And I think it's really exciting. So, well, guys,
I have a good pop culture corner transition for us.
Okay, you got to do it quick because you're on the clock.
We don't have time, Dave.
Which is, it's simple. I'm super excited that Eminem is back and dropped a new song.
But Haley's mad at him for dissing her.
Well, so my point is, do you think Eminem cares whether he's making music for Spotify or Apple News or Instagram? No, he just makes an amazing Eminem song that's the most Eminem song you can possibly imagine. It's fantastic. It's already, in the top 10. He's been out of the game for a long time, but he shows up and he's himself, right? And his whole audience lights up on fire, doesn't matter where. And I think it's the same point you're making, Jess. It's just making great, great, great music, right?
For the people, for the fans. We're just all Taylor Swift. That's what it is. We're just talking about that. Right. Okay. We wish you guys the best on your IPO journey. Have fun. Thanks to everyone for listening, for sharing. As promised, we have
It's already public. It's a PO.
It's already public by the time this.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's public. Yeah, I have. My brain can't live in 2 time zones. I got to say to the listeners, we've got some amazing guests coming on the next 2 weeks. We've got summer fun something that will brand better than that. But thank you guys as always for listening, and we'll see you next week. Have a great one.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a virtual high five by rating it and reviewing it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Find more information about each episode in the show notes, and follow us on social media by searching for @MoreOrLess, @DaveMorin, @Lesson, @JLesson, and as for me, I'm @Brit. See you guys next time.